Hello, my name is Joseph Christos Thrice. My birth name is Joe Stanley, and this is part 6 in a video series outlining all evil, conspiracy, and corruption in the world. And hopefully, by doing so and shining a light on the darkness in the world, we can have a better understanding to create and unveil a better world made of love and a pure version, a raw version of that, while balancing the duality that we have in the world. And in the last part of the series, it started off kind of going into TV and film rather than music, and kind of going off of that as far as subliminal messages, what is known as the Twilight language, basically a sub-language or sub-communication for our language, a different layer that obviously occurs in the subconscious, and basically gives a multitude of different meanings, an understanding of our language, from our history and culture to different aspects of it. And so in the last part, I kind of went over some aspects of TV and film, but kind of more outlined Hollywood and different aspects of how that connects to the government and the politics and kind of how that's set up. And then I veered into some other stuff, dealing with in how they dealt with chemicals and bioengineering and the technology, and kind of going into that a little bit further. I'm going to do that a little bit, but I'm going to first start off by finishing the actual, programming and conditioning and the simulations that they use for actual subliminal messages and subcommunication. So I'm just going to go right where I left off. I did list a good amount of movies as far as like tropes, and I did discuss a few on, some more insider tips on what to look for in our culture if you're trying to verify these kind of hidden truths and different nuances that you would only get with subliminal messages. But yeah, I had left out one movie in particular, and this is a movie called They Live from the 80s. And basically, this was about someone putting on glasses, and they were kind of like these magical glasses, and they were allowing someone to see into the world as it really was. They would see all billboards that would say consume and obey, and basically within this movie, the main character, played by wrestler Roddy Piper, he was able to see this stuff, but also I believe, I'm not sure how exactly, I don't remember exactly, but either in this movie it was kind of acted straight, meaning like they played it straight, the characters, as far as their eyes and the acting of whether they were blinking or doing body gestures. There are obviously some body gestures and everything, but they weren't as deliberate as usual, and how everything came to progress after the 80s or during the 80s. Like I said in my last video, this kind of, as soon as TV was put on the air and television was created, they had this kind of language to program people and to train people, whether that was to not think or to do commands, to find themselves within this hive mind technology or this subconscious communication, or taking information in a different way with multiple meanings of words or language being used in a different way. They were not as big on the like I said, like the eyes and the facial gestures. And if you notice, I think it was like Roddy Piper did not he did not have like eyes that were blinking and communicating codes or anything like that. And there was another guy in it who was like kind of his partner throughout it, and he did it sometimes here and there with some of the types of dialogue. And then there was a redheaded woman who was part of an alien race, and she was doing it. and they were all these aliens who were feeding these subliminal messages with these magical glasses. Was basically, they all worked at the television stations, and they had a television station where they programmed their messages, and basically all the people within that were, had blinking eyes and stuff like that. And one thing I didn't mention in the other movie was over time, they've kind of, like, what they do is this concept of updating, and it's really prevalent now. And the scary part is with the AI and stuff like that, they can literally create different versions of movie scenes, with AI, so it'll be the original content with an overlay of AI kind of changing, possibly body gestures and blinking. And of course, they could have completely different versions of movies. Due to my testing and torture, I've been exposed to a wide variety of literally exactly that. And I've, in my past, rewound movies, and I'd rewatch a scene where the dialogue was changed, or they were wearing different clothes, or something of that nature. And it's pretty much known as B-roll in the industry. Basically taking multiple takes, which I'll get into a little bit more. But basically, it's as easy as that. They take multiple takes, and they can switch them in and out whenever. And so people who are gatekeepers, or now in charge of, like, connecting streaming platforms with these technological things that they use for testing and simulations, and of course torture, they can use that footage and alternative footage and kind of use it whenever they want. And they can also scarily do this with the AI, and it literally, I don't know if you've seen, like, the latest or most recent AI software, but you can go online and see, almost no difference from the original version, or that it's AI or CGI or whatever it may be. And this goes into all the other technology, like deepfake technology, which is already kind of old by this point, or maybe outdated is the word. And so these AI, they're that step above. But either with that or the deepfakes, it's basically like you can do whatever you want. And so who knows when this is used in our society, in our reality. I would say that generally, I have seen stuff, and honestly, what my role sometimes in these torture and test subject sequences and simulation is, basically I go out and find information, and after I search it, I'll see that things have been altered, whether it's the chat GPT, the AI search results on the internet, any news, any stuff in documentaries, any connections that I make, they then alter things and create a different version of them, or slightly altered. So yeah, the way that they could do this in reality is, basically you see somebody on the news and they're like, oh, this person killed someone, or someone robbed someone, and they can get cameras from the hospitals, they can get cameras from police stations, they can get cameras from all the first responders, all that kind of stuff, all public places, with CCTV, which I don't remember when that came out, but I think it might have even been originally in Britain, but I'm not sure. But when that technology came out, it was kind of widespread and kind of went hand in hand with the surveillance, which is also at its peak right now. And like I said in the previous videos, it's at the point where they have our private information, they can spy on us anywhere, they can get our thoughts, they can basically record what we see, and all of this is attached to the matrix of computing knowledge and the supercomputers that take all this information. They also take your personality, and there are servers that are dedicated to 350 million people that live in this country, their personalities, their thoughts, basically their path throughout all life. And this is really scary, right? And it affects some more than others, and some are more willing to go with whatever's going on, so they don't have to interact with that aspect of it as much. They'll have a little more freedom if they go with the narrative and script of the culture and the reality we live in, and what's being pushed by that, whether it's government politics or the culture and films and how it's filmed and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just gonna go into from there, like I said. So just to finish off on that movie, They Live. So basically, that's a good for how it was done before these AI alterations or CGI or anything they could do to update the version of the movie that you would see before. It's basically like you have the main character and the other one who are kind of like blinking normal, like how we used to blink before this hive mind technology and all this stuff, or people who aren't wired or jacked into the matrix through subliminal messages or anything like that. Of course, a lot of the population, they do have different motion with their eyes and their blinking and stuff like that. But some of them, they do act because they want to give the appearance that they are like everybody else, or they're like the people that they're torturing, or the people that are more captive or plugged into the matrix. And once again, you can have people in Hollywood, government and military, people who take place in these psych ops where if they take over a town, they take over everybody in that town. There's no way, for me at least, to say, except through speculation, there are some people who are programmed to have, their gestures and facial stuff kind of wired into the system, and everything's programmed. Sometimes it's half program and half who they are and what they do, and that kind of goes into what you're taught in like an acting school or theater or as a motivational speaker, to get people's attention. And this works on the subconscious level where basically if you do certain things to get people's attention, if I accent with my hand like that while I'm saying something empowering, it's going to have more of an effect. And these are things that you understand more once you are painfully aware of the subtleties of human interaction. Of course, if you're not wired in and you don't really pay attention anyway, it has no effect or very little effect. So there are people who are acting and programmed. There are people who are acting 100% of the time. And there are people who are, don't have to deal with this at all, I would imagine. And, I don't know how it is for those people to know all this can be done. But I would say most of the time, even with this going on, supercomputers can send signals kind of out to anybody at any time and kind of control their mannerisms, or maybe control their voice, or maybe control their thoughts. And it could be they're controlling their thoughts but not their body, or controlling their body, their facial stuff too, and not their thoughts. It could be in any combination. But this, unless you're aware of that, you're jacked into the system. There's no way to know, right? And if you're having thoughts that are being pushed in your head, either as commands or your thoughts literally written by psychic drivers, programmers, or AI simulations to simulate your thoughts, putting you on an automated track, as I kind of discussed in previous videos, where they have brain-to-brain communication. This is being done in colleges, but it's been done for decades. So any of that kind of stuff, it is possible. And if you don't know and you can't tell, then there's no way to know. And of course, with this hive mind stuff, people can communicate through their thoughts, right? And that's the other half of this. So if there is an actual hive mind that everybody is part of, or just insiders are part of, those are the people who would be aware, and like I said in the last video, people, the technology, we have cameras in our eyes, or our eyes can be translated into digital versions on a screen. So basically, there are people who might be a step above that, and if they have a digital interface literally in their eyes, like you would see in a Terminator movie when, they show the Terminator's vision, they literally have a camera of somebody else's vision in their eye. And so it's scary to go through that kind of stuff while someone is also psychic driving you, and AI and simulations and subliminal messages. scary stuff. But sadly, this is all true. This is where we're at. It's just, a matter for me, from the position I am, to only speculate on, does everybody know? And I showed in music, a lot of the artists have that information. So it's like, is it only insiders? Is it everybody? Is everybody find out some part of it eventually, and only torture subjects can really find out really all of what's going on that an insider would have if they had all the information? Obviously, there's got to be a lot of information that's compartmentalized. And when you're doing psych ops, you might find out other stuff that you didn't know. I mean, I don't know how many people know that doctors and nurses are made to torture people as part of these psych ops, and to gas them in hospitals, and to use direct energy weapons and microwaves in hospitals, or that patients are paid to be in mental hospitals to torture patients, that kind of sick stuff. So, once again, you get into other scary stuff like the distribution of pretty much anything you can buy in a store anywhere at any time, and how they have different labels and coding, so they could be a natural process, or literally there could be different buildings and industries that specialize in replicating products and then switching them out. And that can be done at the store, that can be anywhere in the distribution chain, that can be at the actual stores, that can be in someone's house after they buy something. So just going with that kind of concept, I guess. So I mentioned they live. That was the only thing that I thought better of to maybe include that, because it's very interesting to see, if you look and pay attention to the eyes in particular in that film. Hopefully it's still the original version if you watch it. But yeah, all these aliens, like this redheaded woman, they all have different eyes, kind of doing different things, and flutters and all that kind of stuff. And the other character doesn't, the one who has these glasses who can see everything. So is it all an act to do these psychological operations, and all these psychological drivers, psychic drivers, they have more access to everything and know everything, and some people know it exists, but on different levels. So anyway, basically, as I said before, they have, in royalty and playing cards, as we know, the king, the queen, and then the jack. And then the jack is a servant or jester or joker. If you ever look that up, that's kind of how it works. And I have, more information on this. And I think I went into it on the music portion of this video series a little bit. But basically, you're a jack, you're a servant, and when you're jacked in to the matrix, you're kind of serving whatever these people program you to do. And then there's jacks who are wired into the system, but not directly. They're subconscious or on different levels, or they're part of this hive mind, and they serve, the country or the government or the culture or the society. Once again, all different walks of life, to different degrees, right? So pretty much, at some level, all people are guilty. I don't know how many people know about the systematic depopulation system that we're killing, 75,000 people a year through suicide or homicide, and then a portion of the 3 million people that die every year, could be 5%, 10%, or a lot more than that. And then all the millions of people that are involved with that, and the torture, and entertaining themselves with that torture, and learning how to train their skills on 4D and space and time manipulation, while teaching other people these skills, so they can then torture them and make them more disoriented over time. But we're gonna, try and stay on track. So basically, I'm gonna try and break this down as best I can. I can only present as best I can with what I got, and this is handwritten, and a lot of it is really small. So it's just me trying to get as much information and detail I could on the actual programming itself and the conditioning itself, which I did mention a good amount of it in certain aspects, but this will be like the literal, actual techniques they use, I guess. So yeah, different simulations that they can have you take part in. And sadly, over multiple years, I think I've had pretty much every simulation you can have. I've had gas from hundreds of different gases and chemicals in over hundreds of different forms. I've had my air manipulated. I've had radiation exposure, direct energy weapons and microwave exposure, and a multitude of subliminal messages. You know, it sometimes would be the speech, then it would be the eyes, then the body language, and that happened in the past year. The torture in hospitals and mental hospitals, the torture by first responders, you know, like I said, the serialization of changing all products. I currently do not have access to any products without them being tampered with, and most of them causing harm to me. There's this thing called remote deliveries, and also teletransference, both kind of things I kind of coined to explain the fact that they can deliver remotely, you know, to your brain, to your body, different chemicals or reactions. They can do telesurgeries, which you can find on Google, and you can see that it's a real thing, but it extends a lot more than that. I've had remote lobotomies, you know, over a dozen times, maybe more. I've woken up with cuts, you know, on my arms or parts of my body, and basically, like, they would be healed in like an hour from waking up. So I'd wake up and it would be a deep scar, and then I wake up an hour later and it's gone. And I've had that happen several times. So yeah, stuff like that. There's also been, you know, in my home, that's been turned into like basically a concentration camp with the gases and direct energy weapons put out by neighbors who are in the military or part of these psychological operations. Basically, there are lasers and laser technology, laser weapons, plasma weapons and stuff like that, that, you know, I'm not sure how much you can find details on the specifics of what I've encountered, but, you know, they have these chemicals that will literally freeze your body. And so they freeze different parts of your muscle and tissue, and then they have lasers literally set up in the environment that you live in, your room, your house, and it will cut off these parts of your tissue and muscle. And at this time, I have had muscle and tissue taken off my whole entire chest multiple times, and there's not a lot left, but, you know, you do wonder, where does that muscle and tissue go? And you know what I mean? There's also said that from a lot of the chemicals, I've had mold in my body. They would, I would think in theory, be able to remotely take out that mold and send it to the same place where they take out, you know, the frozen parts of my body. And once again, they can heat up my body as well. I've handled so many different types of direct energy. I really can't even explain it to you, you know, except kind of going into more detail about all the various types. But there are a lot of different variations to it, obviously. And stuff that's for your head is different than your body. But basically, breaking down, there's like electricity, and that can be electricity based, or it'd be direct energy, which energy based, which heat energy, thermal energy, and there's, you know, another few different types, but all can be transmitted through a signal. So just going into that a little bit, just to, you know, I try and go over the same topic just a little bit when I'm talking before I get into it for each part of this series, just so it can easily be connected at different parts, so can hopefully embed it in your brain a little bit. And like I said, with this, all of this stuff, like I said, you can interpret language in many different ways without the subliminal messages, and you can understand stuff that they're saying in different catchphrases or metaphors or allegories, and in different contexts. You know, it could be spiritual or religious, and it can be a beautiful thing, or it could be kind of trying to do the opposite of that, you know what I mean, and just kind of creating hell on earth for you. And yeah, and I'll add, you know, I've literally heard thoughts in both my ears, because I got a signal in both my ears within the past few months. So now I have thoughts in my ear, thoughts in my other ear, and thoughts in my head, and it's beyond disorienting to have three different pathways of thoughts at the same time. And in the past few weeks, become my torture and trying to make these videos to get out the truth. I've been put on track with AI, so I can literally right now, I can hear words, well, it comes in and out, but I can hear my words, kind of what it sounds like to be over a speaker, or I'll hear literally nanoseconds in time, milliseconds in time, before I think my own thoughts. I'll hear it in my ear, or I'll hear it in my head and think it, and then hear it in my ear. So it's kind of like a delayed thought and then transferred to the ears, or a pre-delay, pre-reverb in my head. Once again, I know these things are not natural, and they're more of a program more than anything. I've endured enough to know that. Like I said, like, they can make you believe that you have schizophrenic or psychotic kind of things, which obviously they're going to come, and you're going to have damage and memory damage, long-term and short-term. But like I said, I went through crazy amounts of noise just from my own thoughts, and just static of so many noise, and basically how I've described Tourette's of the brain, Tourette's of your thoughts. So it just forces stuff to come out. And then there's also this other technique, kind of what I would call like a reader simulation. And I don't know if it's done by AI all the time, or if it's just a program, automated program, or it's done by these psychic drivers, which then again, that also gets into if people can see what I'm seeing through my eye, through their eye, and these psychic drivers could put their thoughts into my head. And that could be a script or improv or a combination of both. So all that crazy stuff, like I said in my last video, we're talking about stuff that seems impossible, stuff that seems fantastical or futuristic, and a lot of this technology has existed for decades. Like I said, you know, this kind of programming goes back to the 50s, so they've had a long time to figure this stuff out. And as I say that, you know, the government has had, you know, 75 years at least to regulate or unveil this synthetic telepathy or hive mind, or this 4D thinking, this 4D way of living, and the manipulation of 4D and 3D, and manipulation of space and time. And as I've said to myself many times, if everybody knows, why aren't we not unveiling this publicly? And moreover, why are we not addressing all these other things? And it's because they want to continue this depopulation program, and also this fake manufactured, fabricated narrative and agenda for the world. So that's why I'm saying, if everybody knows all aspects that I know, it's even sadder, you know. But I feel different people know different amounts. I think a lot of people are aware that this world is kind of manufactured by design. I don't know how many people are actually in this hive mind versus how many are watching people or monitoring people, remotely monitoring people in different ways, people of interest, and where the line between all this and espionage comes in, and military efforts and private sector, and trying out all these weapons and trying out all this technology, basically using whoever they want to, you know, picking out loners, people that don't work, people that are dissenters, you know, people who are against the liberal agenda, because that's who controls the mainstream, people who are against the mainstream, all these different versions of people that they just, you know, say they're obsolete, you know, and that kind of thing, you know. And so, you know, what comes with that, with the mind control and the synthetic telepathy and the hive mind, these psychic drivers and this kind of Nazi-like surveillance state, you know, if everybody knows, or some people know, regardless, that means all crime, you know, rapes, assaults, robberies, murder, torture, all this kind of stuff I'm going through, the guinea pig stuff, could all be solved. All criminals could be arrested. And of course, you know, a lot of the criminals are legal criminals hired by the government. psychopaths and sociopaths are sought after by the government agencies because they're easier to manipulate or to do evil things. We go back to the Stanford experiment where they had the prisoner and the prison guard. And so, they've done so much research, after 71 and before 71 on that exact kind of thing. So they now have it down pretty good. But what also comes with this is, all these programmers, all these biohackers, all these bioengineers, these people, dealing with bacteria and viruses and putting literally stuff that matches your DNA signature, which is specific to your own body and your own mind. Putting this with, like I said, literally everything that I touch: food, medicine, drinks, water I haven't had in 6 months, inhalers I haven't had in over 6 months, soap. I've had bleach showers for 6 months. Like I said, all these other gases, all this other chemicals and gases I don't smell. I've had different viruses, different bacteria and allergens, all sorts of combinations of that. All these different people who are behind this stuff. There's many industries, right? I just listed a bunch. And the serialization, distribution of this stuff is one thing, or people kind of switching stuff out. But the actual industries, private sector, big pharma, military, government agencies, all the defense for that kind of stuff, all these things for safety, all these things for espionage, all the technology. I mean, these are all billion-dollar, trillion-dollar industries. These are what lead us in the world. Just saying, hey, you don't need privacy of thought, you don't need privacy of information. I'm sure they'll come out with it maybe at some point in different various ways and to different degrees. But having ability of your thoughts and not having privacy, and you'll take it and you won't own any property. And God knows how will come once robots, and AI really take over the workforce. Nobody really seems to, talk about that or judge our society on how it could be better done. They just go with the marching orders. They just go with the narrative. But all these people are culpable, and a majority of the people in the population are guilty of, like I said, basically hiding, guinea pig experiments and a depopulation program, killing millions of people every decade, and harming themselves and making their society, mentally ill and psychotic. I mean, endless, right? And so with that, all mental illness could be cured. And I'm going to guess a majority of illnesses probably have vaccines and cures. Like they've said for many years, vaccines, in underground labs. There's an underground lab just for my life specifically, so I mean, I can only speak to what I know, and I'm not going to say there's a cure for every type of cancer, every type of thing, but we have, a cure for HIV, where in the 80s, they were, targeting gay people, you know what I mean? That was a big part of the story. But so many people are having a lot of sex that I guess maybe that they thought to do that because they can control a population that has lots of sex or has sex appeal, or that they can sell sex to, which is sadly a big part, selling sex and violence and selling drama. And then, like I said, the divide and conquer, well, it's politics and culture. So just so that I get that part, just to kind of square it away. But so yeah, the simulations. I'm going to name a couple and then kind of show some examples. So one of I'll just list all these simulations. So they have a technique where they create what is called a live simulation. And basically that's making you feel like they can read your thoughts, and basically that you feel like you're there. It's like the same, it's like if you were, walking, right in front of them, and the people that are talking in the video can hear you. They can hear your thoughts. They can see you, whatever you're doing. They kind of react with it, and they kind of mirror your images. And if you have thoughts, they kind of mirror with gestures and hand gestures, or with their eyes. They communicate with their eyes, which can surprisingly do a lot of communication just with your eyes, let alone your whole face. Then you add your body and all this kind of stuff. So all that's kind of done. And like I said, these people, whether they're part of a hive mind or not, or what they know and don't know. You know, in actor school, motivational speaking, like, it's used to get people's attention or draw people's subconscious. And when you're part of this, matrix kind of thing, you're going to just take in every subtle thing that they can. So a lot of these automated scripts they come up with for your brain, or these psychic drivers who are driving you. They know your personal details, your personality, how you react to stuff. And the more you watch TV, the more they can write down or automate and have AI program it, and then creates predictive programming. I said that a little bit in my other video, but basically, like, all these things add up to creating the illusion that it's live. And so when it first happens, you really think that you're like somehow traveling over the signal, and what happened to me at the beginning was literally, and I'll get into it a little bit, but I went to YouTube and I would see someone either pre-recorded material specifically for me that they would automate to a track, or it would basically be like they'd put a live video in place of whatever video was originally on YouTube or any other website on the internet. And so that kind of like laid the foundation for me. And then, like I said, over time they kind of did this stuff with the audio and dialogue and stuff like that. After 5 years, I started getting tortured in hospitals and stuff got really bad. I don't know if that's always how they systematically kill people that don't get a job or don't assimilate to this new brave world we live in, as they would want to say, or all the evil parts, which is the reason why people stay in this hell, in addition to being tortured just so much so that they can take it just to live on through the day, but they never accomplish stuff and they want. So, I've had lots of goals. Obviously, this video series, I've wanted to do this for 3 years, and they had me just bogged down trying to quit cigarettes because they were putting poison in all my cigarettes, and they would always change it, and they would do subliminal messages to really torture me over that. And I quit a couple times. They try to get you to not think. I'm not sure if that's part of the hive mind or part of this robots in society where they have to be pets or toys. And I'm not sure if people just get used up until they die or commit suicide or homicide or whatever the case may be, or that some people free themselves, or they go to this prison when they misbehave and they have to deal with it that way. But yeah, so I don't know. But so I had 5 years, got tortured in a hospital, and I don't know if this is systematically how they always kill people, but it was just in the past year that I really got introduced to the body gestures and having to bob and weave through, one of the other things I'm going to be talking about, which is basically interacting with television or anything on a screen in a 4-dimensional and 3-dimensional way, where basically if you get, you see me get hit in the head, so picture you, the viewer, watching this, and you're having a sensation in your head, and then I punch myself and you feel that in your head. That's kind of like this physical transference that's done remotely. And like I said before, there's some stuff I can't really get into, as if it's AI or a psychic driver or invasion of the body snatchers are real, or it's a lot of this programming or technology that is really that scary and specific on how it can literally puppet you. It can literally puppet you, make you do whatever it wants. And then, like I said, once you get programmed, then enough repetition, you start doing these things, and I've done crazy things in the past, thinking that it means something or whatever, someone's just playing a game, using me as blood sport or whatever, you know what I mean? So I'll get a little more into, the 40 or the physical reactions that you have to deal with and somehow kind of like fight almost like a game, or just to keep your health, you know what I mean? It is crazy. It really is. Like I said, dealing with futuristic stuff on top of all the torture that you can't even really explain. It kind of defies your logic of science and quantum physics, quantum computing, and a bunch of other biological stuff going on. So anyway, so that's kind of like what feeds into the foundation for the live simulation. And what also comes with that is once that kind of is laid down, which that was laid down to me in the first few years, right? So a lot of that, could have been live stuff. It could have been pre-recorded stuff for these psychological ops. But it did kind of happen here and there with TV, but it was always mostly like the dialogue. And I'd be on a track with the dialogue. Like I said, it was just the past few years where it was really like the body gestures and all this other aspects. But once you get to older film or older TV shows or anything like that, it introduces kind of the same concept. So it does give the allusion to your psychological and cognitive like thinking and abilities and your perception, interpretation. As if you're there, and because your mind believes it, even if you don't believe it, your mind believes it on a subconscious level, making it real on the conscious level. So if your mind makes it real, that's what makes it real for your body. And so once again, if you're jacked and wired into the system, there's not even anything you can do about it, even if you know it's not real and you're kind of made to believe it. And like I said, I have damage to my short-term and long-term memory. Can't recall a lot of information. A big factor is they wipe my memory from my mind. So I can't tell you how many thoughts I've had wiped. I can't tell you how many days over the past 8 years I've had wiped. But yeah, it's a large portion of it. And they kind of like got this technique where it's like, and I'll go into it again and repeat it, but whatever. Your eyebrows, they embed a subliminal message subcommunication that basically is saying like your eyebrows is your browser history. That's what they do. They use words with similar language or different meanings that have different meanings in different industries, and they use that. So for your eyebrows, they would call it your browser history. So you wipe your eyebrows to wipe your history, or wipe your mind's eye. And literally, they wipe your memory, they wipe your thoughts, and they wipe your history from short-term stuff to long-term stuff. Could be minutes, could be hours, could be days, and then they can bring them back, months later, years later. Horrible stuff, So yeah, and like I said, with all this, like I said, lots of words have opposite meanings. Lots of words can be used across many industries. Like I said, like I don't know how much you can go into the jack stuff as just using it as a proof of concept. But you can jack into a stereo system. You can jack somebody into this digital kind of stuff, and you do that with a cable, right? Or you can jack someone as you rob them. You can get jacked as in, again, lots of muscles. So like I said, like this is how they use and bastardize the language. And that doesn't get into the other stuff that I'm kind of going to go into a little bit. But this goes hand in hand with, I mentioned, multiple times, the Def Jam comedies and how slang word used to be deaf. This is what happens when you have so many subliminal messages that you really can't understand, English. So they say you're speaking a foreign language because you have so many interpretations of what people are saying. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is intended by subliminal messages to program. A lot of it's intended literally by the writers to do this, and then all other times it's kind of like become the culture in a way. Concepts of shows or themes or tropes or jokes in the shows are based off people's like schizophrenic interpretations, which also, like I said in the other video, if you take enough acid, mushrooms, stuff like that, which I've been microdosed for a month, 2 months, and all these other designer drugs and mind-altering drugs that, I'm sure you could maybe find names to some of them, but, all that kind of stuff, and then different boosts of adrenaline, rewiring your central nervous system, rewiring your, interpretation of stuff, rewiring your brain literally to fire off different neurons than it would originally, having different synapses and creating different pathways in your brain through that, pretty much called brain mapping, doing that kind of thing. So yeah, that makes you deaf, if you know what I mean. And so, you can call it subliminal simulation, subliminal language simulations, or schizophrenic language programming. And it is exactly what it sounds like, and a lot of things, as I mentioned, the other part of the series, the more you look up, whether it's etymology, the study of language, to see how languages are connected, to get all these inside jokes, or, just different, concepts. Like I said, like there's a master key I had for music. There's also one for TV and movies and culture. A lot of it is by catchphrases. The more catchphrases you look up and see what the origin of them is, or the culture behind it or the history behind it, the more you're going to understand all these inside jokes. And so if you know that, and if they write dialogue for a certain joke in a certain way, that they know what you know. You know what I mean? Like I said, the more knowledge you have, the more you get tortured. And I have a lot of information, which is why I've been tortured a lot. And this stuff is pretty dangerous. If I wrote like a full mapping of everything from every catchphrase and the origin of it, and then you were to watch TV, even without subliminal messages, I think it would maybe cause you some dis-ease, because it's a lot of stimulation. You're taking in all these phrases and then you start hearing them in a certain way, and once again, a big part of this that they introduced to you at the beginning is that we're torturing you until you die, or we're going to kill you, or we're going to kill you soon. And so I spent, the first 6 months of my life, 6 months of my life in this, condition and situation, being afraid that someone's going to break in and kill me and come just shoot me, shoot my family or whatever. And then something might happen to me outside of the house, or I get some kind of disease, or they give me some type of infection. And they've done all this kind of stuff and all these other poisons. So as you go through it, they still beat you with a hammer on that. But you can hear someone say, because people in the reality, in the real world, do this, and they take part in these psychops. Like I said, they like to hunt people, and that's how they get through their life, or they think they're doing something good by hiding these guinea pig experiments and taking part in them and torturing innocent people. Or they think, they're a rat, they think they're a bad person, or they, get into the scapegoat ritual aspect, or they don't like that they're, a virgin, or Mary, or pure, or like Jesus Christ, or have any thoughts, pairing themselves to aspects of these kind of archetypes. And then they hate them for wanting to be perfect. And once again, people like me and people like that reflect how bad of people they are. And once they give their own opinions, I'm sure I could piss off a lot of people, and show that I'm reflecting that they aren't good people and that they're doing a bad thing. So they hate you for all these reasons and more, and they just, reprogram to hate themselves. It's a torture and a joy. Going back into how they like sociopaths. So I've been talking a lot, but I have been saying some useful stuff as we're going along. So once again, there's the psychic driving simulation. And once again, like, this happens in the real world, and it happens, when you watch TV and different videos, and that's how it kind of gets you into it. But basically, I already kind of mentioned all that stuff. It's just kind of reading from a script or automated AI or script that was customized for you based on, algorithms always working and continuing to get more accurate over time, or torture you in deliberate ways. Could be to make you angry, could be to make you sad, could to speed up your mind. The direct energy weapons and a lot of the things that they do will literally cook your brain. They got a new slang term, that's like, hey, this person just got cooked. I mean, this is literally, showing how awful, I use the word deaf, which used to be slang. Now, people nowadays, the youth or whatever, they use the term cooked. This is cooked. They got cooked. They got baked, and baked used to be reference to getting weed. But, this is your brain on drugs in a frying pan. This is your brain on subliminal messages and targeting. Fries your brain, or they'll activate, like I said, like the electricity in your brain and shoot it off and really like set you up. And like I said, other drugs to speed up or give you adrenaline. So it makes you think really, really fast before, you may have five thoughts in a millisecond. And that's not exaggeration. And add the electricity in your brain, going on, kind of like a speed cycle, um, it's really troubling stuff, which is why I'm going to guess it took about 2 years to figure out how to reprogram my mind and get clear again. So it was like literally kind of like silent again. But I've always had those Tourette's. I've always had Tourette's in my thinking. I've always had this kind of uncontrollable aspect to it based on the programming. Like I said, thinking that I had mental illness for multiple years, you know what I mean? Which I do have. Damaged central nervous system, cognitive stuff, all that kind of stuff. My memory's been damaged, but so I think that's it for like the simulations. I'll just add like the 4D/3D physical transference simulations. As I said, this kind of goes into, like I mentioned earlier, you get hit in the see someone get hit in the head, and somehow they transfer this. Either it's all done as an illusion, and this happens in the real world too, sadly. And sometimes, they have people yelling stuff in public, and your ears will basically perceive it as if they were talking to you, which this is done with subliminal messages. But sometimes people are yelling at you, and then you get really paranoid between the difference and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of hard to dictate or conclude what is actually being done and how it's being done, or how others are being dictated how they should act and how it affects you, and what's the actual technology and the people in your brain versus what you're experiencing. But there could be a gun scene, and you can see someone get shot, or there's a bunch of guns flying off, and literally your mind has to basically go from mind to mind or body to body within that scene on the screen. And I hope I'm explaining that to the best of my ability. But it comes with this term that they introduce to you, and it's basically called breaking the glass. So you watch TV on a glass, right? Or you watch TV and there's glass, or at least there used to be. Now it's more, of a screen or whatever. But it's basically breaking that fourth wall. So going, if I'm coming right at, what I mean? Like, you could get this. And so this is, right in your face. So imagine everything is like that. And it's like you're wearing 3D glasses, in the 3D theater. So it's coming right out at you, and it can hit you. You know what I mean? So bloop, 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 bloop. You're getting hit in the head as they do this. It's coming at you. You feel it, and every sensation with it. You know what I mean? So that's the best way I can describe it. Like I said, if you're going in a firing scene where there's like, a bunch of stuff going on, and if you don't keep up mentally, in the speed of it, like I said, they're already ratcheting your speed to test the endurance of the brain and your perception and all this other stuff, going to literally Planck time, like the fastest measurement for time to, measure. And it's basically playing around with the idea of four-dimensional space, you and your brain and your thoughts interacting with the 3D world. That's what 4D basically is. So you can experience in the real world, you can experience it through this. You know what I mean? Basically, like I said, with like this reader technology where it's like anything that has text, it will just, your mind, it's a program that makes you automatically read everything. So even if you're not programmed around that program, this repetition of it will make it so you have this and the Tourette's. And so, I've had like literally, if I'm near someone that is gay or something like that, maybe they're not even gay, it will have my brain say homo, in my brain. And like lots of people have like this in real Tourette's, right? So like I said, you never know where the illusion of it is and what you actually have and what's the actual program. So yeah, scary on every degree. So as I said, this is if you're wired or jacked into the actual matrix. Can be used as a doll, as a slave, as a robot, used for espionage, used in interrogation simulations, which is also another thing, or interview simulation. And they're exactly what they sound like, so there's no reason to really get into them. And then people use this in the real world with you so you know, you can kind of, you're being filmed by multiple cameras that are posted in your house or wherever you go with, you know, CCTV or whatever, and people can get kind of like the inside scoop on what's going on with you, and then they use that to torture you more, so they have more details and information and data. And as we know, data is what drives our society right now, and sadly it's kind of always been that way. So just kind of going in, I've said this in other videos, they have like the mafia code, where mafia people used to call someone and they'd be like, you know, tell my mother I'm not coming home for dinner. And, you know, obviously they weren't talking about going to see their mom for dinner. You know, they were talking about some kind of operation that the mafia was trying to do, and that, you know, hey, things didn't go according to plan, and blah, 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 etc., etc. So, once again, with the subliminal language, that's kind of like a way to explain one of these concepts where it's like, you don't need subliminal messages to talk in code, right? So once you know the subliminal messages and different words have different meanings in the industries and how you hear them and perceive them differently, you could watch the same TV show and get a different message every time, and then you know literally every message. And if it's in your subconscious and your consciousness and your memory, that's a lot of how you interpret stuff. So if people say a certain phrase in a certain way with different accents or different accents on different words, and saying stuff in a certain context, you can understand it, you know what I mean? Because if you were saying, hey, tell mom I won't be there for dinner, it can either mean that strictly, hey, tell my mom I'm not going to be there for dinner, or this different version where it's like, you know, saying things didn't go according to plan with a mafia operation. Or, you know, mother could, you know, taking this a step further, mother could mean something else. You know, I mean, could mean, you know, let's say like the Matrix, or maybe your actual mother, or someone who's like your mother, in a different context, meaning a different person. So they're trying to communicate a message about a specific person. And dinner could mean nourishment of multiple different kinds. So I hope I'm kind of explaining that a little bit. Like mother could be multiple people, dinner could be multiple things or different types of nourishment, or different variations of what that nourishment could be. You know, coming home for dinner, that could be, you know, music, you know, like if you have, you're saying, you know, going back to the music a little bit, you sing your own song, right? This video is my song, right? In a different manner of speaking. If you understand that kind of thinking and understanding and intention, so I'm saying this, you know, my song is to spread the truth and to get rid of evil and unveil the truth, you know, and all that, and that's my song. Or you're talking about actually singing a song, or it could mean so many other things. So I hope that's kind of like straightforward. Some of the stuff I'm trying to kind of just going into as I you know, read into it, or read it off, and remembering other stuff and connecting it to other parts of this video series. Excuse me. But yeah, so as I kind of just mentioned, example for like how to create this sub-language, sub-communication, this schizophrenic language, this thing that can make you deaf or interpret English as a foreign language. You interpret the whole language after a while in a different way. You know, one example of this could be splitting words into syllables to create new phrases or different meanings. An example of this, you know, the word context. You have context to know different things, you know, the different perspectives or nuances of it, and within certain contexts, stuff means different things have different meanings. And so you can break that word up. Context. Oh, we just gave him the context. So text, to con someone, and con is to fool someone or to get over on somebody, right? So see how easy that is? Context out of context. You can literally break pretty much the majority of words into that kind of double meaning. And you know, sometimes like you can see like I think, you know, there's got to be like a good amount of catchphrases that do that, and you know, so different, you know, people in songs do that a lot. But it also happens in shows and like inside jokes for shows, or like corny, like what they now call like the dad jokes, or like puns, or that type of humor. Um, so people who are tech can do this even more by accenting those different syllables in a word. So someone can just say context, so they'll be like the context, you know, or they'll be like context. And so by giving that body gesture when you say con, if you're picking up on all the subtleties, context, you know what I mean, or, you know, context, you know, just doing it on the different syllables, or accenting to break it up into different syllables and making that kind of jump out at you. That's how it's done, you know what I mean. So you could do that to anybody, you know. So in a way, a lot of this goes back to, you know, 1700s, even 1300s, and it's kind of like the alchemy of language. And I discussed the Twilight language and how beautiful that can be, and the concept behind that, you know, leading back to Sanskrit through that, you know. But yeah, I mean, you can do the opposite and make stuff, you know, hell, or you can just kind of be kind of doing like this witchcraft. And basically these subliminal messages are witchcraft plus CIA plus mind control, you know, plus manipulation, you know. It's so many different aspects of stuff, in code breaking and deciphering code. So all these different aspects kind of go into it. So yeah, I think I just said it, but people in tech can do this even more with the programming. So literally doing stuff at different volumes can do that as well. And using, like I said, those physical gestures, and just give a little, you know, you go into, I'm sure this has been in the culture or something, but a couple more examples that can be kind of a positive thing, but still the same kind of breaking down to at least make a proof of concept in your head so they can do it later. Could be, you know, once you get these concepts, or, you know, this magic, or witchcraft, whatever you want to call it, you know, once again, kind of going back to Masonic stuff, you know, they have craft and the craftsmen and masonry, you know, all that kind of stuff. It goes back to the alchemy and the Hermetic roots. That's where Masonic Masons take some of that kind of stuff. There's obviously a lot more stuff to Masons, but I'm just saying that's just one aspect of it. But so anyway, so another example of this would be the word supernatural, and extraordinary, extraordinary. So it's stuff like that that can really change your outlook on the world, or change how words have meaning, you know. And like I said, I could give you the origins to a lot of words and catchphrases, which I'm not going to do. I didn't write them down. I didn't want to. I'm just telling you that you can go look that up on Google. You can look up anything, you know, and you'll find stuff. And like I said, if you look into stuff and how people say them, or in music or in culture, you're going to find people who are doing this kind of witchcraft. And sometimes it's, you know, connecting ideas to make you feel something. And other times it's to do awful stuff, you know. So obviously there's a happy medium for a lot of this stuff as well. But if you've been tortured, or you know that subliminal messages exist and you're doing this kind of stuff, a lot of people are out there to kind of be pranksters and don't care about the evil aspect, and that it results in suicide, homicide, or, like I said before, if they think these people should be dead because, oh, it's an outsider and they're not respecting, you know, this lineage and the legacy of what we have. And it's like, if this legacy was always secrecy and espionage and killing people and torturing people, then it's not really a good legacy, is it? And once again, they want to blanket it as duality. It's unbalanced duality. It's a misuse and abuse of fire and negativity, and the evil or dark end of the spectrum within this duality. There's a light and there's a dark. But if there's not really that much truth or pure love, like love has been turned into a formula, like you'll see in pop music, you know, that isn't, you know, there are artists who know how to write love songs, and they write it from the heart and write it from their spirit and write how they feel. And, you know, it's amazing when that happens, you know, whether, you know, it's a rock song or a neo soul song, R&B, or hip hop or pop even, you know. But a lot of the pop music is literally a formula, has the same chord progressions for 90% of the music. Most of the lyrics are written by ghostwriters, which means they have someone write the lyrics for them. They have someone write the music for them, and someone produce and do everything. So you get a pop singer, and literally the only thing they do is go in and sing, which makes it that much more depressing that people are lip syncing on top of that in those kind of situations. But they can dance too. So another example of this, like I said, is if you were to literally look up prefixes and suffixes. The way I broke up context, basically you can do this with other languages or your knowledge of etymology. So if you know where certain prefixes came, and this doesn't, this is just because I like etymology, and I'm sure they program you to like this stuff, so you look into it more and more. And like I said, the more knowledge you have, the more dangerous it is, and the more they can program you and literally break apart your mind until you go crazy and want to kill yourself, which is how a lot of people kill themselves and kill other people. Just have to mention that every couple times. But yeah, you can have different languages, and let's see. So just to kind of like, I'm not sure, you can have English, you could have German, you could have Old English, like British stuff. You can have, literally ancient languages, or, dead languages as well, depending on how much you know. Obviously not as much on dead languages, but thought I'd mention it, just like all the variations that could be. But take a word like garden. See, I even said it weird because I'm reading it. Like garden, like there's like kind of like a thing. And like I said, once you know tropes, like they say fat cats are smoking cigars, and that's kind of like goes into like this baking and cooking thing. People who are alchemists, they consider themselves chefs or cooks. So that gives you a different aspect of it also, both in more ancient times, older times, and the modern day. But basically, cigar is if you're smoking somebody, that's a term. Yo, I'm smoking them right now. Taking them out, beating them, whatever. You know what I mean? So like, like I said, that's one of the words I looked up, and you saw all the different meanings for it. But if you, so we'll take garden first, right? Gar by itself, or, the prefix that goes to old names in English, I believe, from Britain, or, United Kingdom, whatever. Gar means spear, and you could combine that with den, and den, like they call it like the lion's den, right? So you can go to a den, so that would be a spear den, you know what I mean? Or you could then take the other word den, look that word up, and see what the meaning of den meant, and by itself, with its suffix or with a prefix, where the etymology came from, what was the origin of the word, and then there's like this more schizophrenic way where people make puns out of this, out of words this way too. So you break up the word cigar, right? And it could be, cigar, as in the letter C. You could make up any interpretation for what C stands for. Could stand for champion, you know what I mean? Could be C as in S-E-E, I see. And so, and I think I'm reading this right. It says Gar is oven in German. So a lot of this stuff, like I said, some of these inside jokes is because they have the culture and the legacy of culture and history, and they kind of protect that. That's what they're guardians of. So that's why they do, sometimes have stuff that actually is actually accurate like that. Obviously, if you did that with each word and trying to figure stuff out, that's where you get crazy. That's where you start getting deaf more. But you do kind of know the jokes as what they are, and sometimes they don't even bother you because you're like, oh, I get that, and it's no subliminal thing. You just, you're in the know about that type of word or what the secret meaning is. But so you could have, a cigar, cigars, and S-E-E. Maybe you say with a Z, Zigar, Maybe you're seeing the gar, as in you're seeing a cigar, or seeing the oven in German, or just gar as in something else. Maybe you're going to attach it to some word like Garfield, and maybe you see, oh, a cigar and Garfield, maybe there's something there. And see, this is how the mind interprets things. So like I said, people know that this is how they break down the mind and break down the psyche, and how people understand an intended language versus language that they create to cause harm. So I'm just doing a little proof of concept, and going on with German, taking different words. This is just an example that there are many different words that mean different things in different languages, but you can mean them straight on or not. So like, for instance, the word the in German is die. So little fun fact of German, I guess. But just kind of take that concept, and someone could be making some kind of joke within that kind of context. I don't really want to go too much more into it, but so basically, yeah, I'll get into some subliminal physical gestures, as I mentioned earlier, about the eyebrows and wiping your brows, or wiping your browser history. There could be several different, you can wipe your brow because you're sweaty, and you're in a, let's say you're in a situation that would make you sweaty in that context. So you're in like some kind of heated situation, or you're really nervous, and you're like, ooh, I gotta wipe my brow. And so it kind of sends a subliminal message that you're really sweaty, or that because you have that connotation to that, wiping of the brow, and kind of goes from there. So I'm not going to go crazy and just do one by one all the different meanings that you could take. So in TV shows and in real life, these are things that they do. And some of them, they could be directed to do it, or they do it naturally, or it's scripted that way for no reason or some reason, but you begin to see the nuances. You have putting on and off glasses. Sunglasses. Wearing sunglasses could be, hey, cool, or sunglasses, you gotta block the sun, so you could be really hot. It could take on different meanings. There's smoking. They have no smoking signs on a lot of TV shows, not as much, but they still do. And you think, why are there so many no smoking signs? And yeah, it is a natural thing there in the world, but why are so many locations on why are there so many on locations on the building in that specific area where there's no smoking sign? And does it relate to the dialogue? Does it relate to the plot in the story or the theme? Once again, like no smoking, it could go to subliminal messages, like I said, to my personal life, to not smoking. And a lot of people, that's how they torture them. They take away their smoking, take away weeds or drug use, that kind of stuff. Or smoking, like I said, like you said, hey, I'm smoking someone. So maybe it's like not attacking someone or being hostile, you know what I mean? Stop smoking, don't smoke, no smoking. So it can take on multiple meanings. You can have head movements. You can go to the right, you can go to the left, same thing. With your eyes, basically left, left, right, both at the same time. I'm kind of doing bad, but so it's kind of like that kind of stuff. And they always go to conspiracy things where people are blinking in Morse code, and I can guarantee you that's happening somewhere. It happens somewhere, or it happens. Like I said, people can be programmed to do stuff and they don't even know. Like I'm just talking right now, just doing it random. Who knows if I could be doing a message? And you think Morse code is really fast for a dot, and really slow for a dash, and that's how you can communicate messages, or just a couple letters, and that can be shorthand. But yeah, so you have that kind of thing going on. I forget what the left eye is for, but like the right eye, like a left eye can be like you're kind of seeing stuff, and there's some power and dominance to it. I don't remember what it is, but the right eye will ward away evil, and then you have your mind's eye. Basically, you know, you could look up the left eye, but basically in Hollywood they do systematically kind of, you can tell that it's not just their eyes doing it on purpose, or naturally rather, or unnaturally for that matter. But it's literally, it goes with the script. So when they say certain dialogue, they will literally, you know, say something, and it could be like, you know, that's how they kind of make it out in the real. You're kind of given that kind of weird wink kind of thing, but then there's just kind of like normal talking and, you know, saying it, you know, so no meaning there. You know, I was just blinking my left eye as I said it, but you can get into the art of gestures and the art of just your eyes alone. Like I said, there are people who, like I said, just as a fun fact, there are people who literally roll their eyes in different directions on within their eyeball, you know. So it's like, it goes to show some people spend way too much time doing this stuff, you know. But yeah, so you can do your left eye or right eye, raising eyebrows, and then, hey, you're raising eyebrows, you're talking about something you shouldn't be raising eyebrows, you know, and watch out. You can do this, you're on the lookout for someone, so you could be doing like this while you're talking, or you avoid the sun, like going back to the sunglasses stuff. You can nod, you can shake your head, you can shrug your shoulders, you can have your chin up, you know, and we know the connotation to that. You can touch your ear, you could touch your earring, you could kind of, if you're a woman, have your earrings kind of dangle and move around. You can scratch your head, as in like, you're making me think. You can scratch a part of your body, as in like, you know, that could take on different meanings. You know what I mean? Maybe you're getting out an itch that you have to, you know what I mean? And they could be putting a message in your head, or it refers to the dialogue. You can put up a finger like this, you can put up like that. This kind of goes into like turning like these pets or toys or robots, or just programming people to not think or be part of this hive mind and respect space, or 4D space, or your cognitive space and other people's cognitive space, if such a thing exists. But basically, you know, if someone's thinking, if you say something, you can go like this, and it's kind of like, oh, I get a point, and they're imaginary points that don't mean anything, or you're trying to make a point and you're saying, or you're trying to get someone's attention, you know, I have this to say, excuse me. So some meanings with that beyond just a game, you know. You can give a thumbs up, you can have a fist clenched, you can do the Superman pose, you know, and that's kind of got multiple, you know, things going as far as the meaning and connotations for that. They're Superman, saying it to you to say, hey, you're Superman, kind of giving you, like, if they're giving you a hard time and they do that, then it kind of gives you this positive kind of subconscious, like, approval, and then you kind of won't go, you know, it's kind of manipulation. So you can touch your forehead. Once again, this could be like, get out of my head, or hey, I'm in your head, or hey, I'm messing with your head. It goes into the third mind, and I won't go into it this much, but like that much of this video. But you can use your third eye, and with the electricity, and this goes into the hardcore science that I've lived, I've healed and regenerated my body. And like I said, you know, take this for what it's worth. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. This could all be illusion. People have also turned on my lights, basically for all of my chakras, and turned off on my energy centers. And sometimes, you know, with like a light in a room through a light bulb, through electricity, I can get energy and, you know, all sorts of different stuff. They've also nuked and microwaved my third eye, or the light from my third eye, out of my head. And if you open up your third eye, whether it's Force Kundalini Awakening, or you do it through meditation, or you try it and then you get it, I had all of those kind of done to me. You do see like a white light in your head as you're meditating in your head. If you use the light, you can get that light to there, and you can do that with all the centers, and this can heal and regenerate your body, or at least give signals to an AI system, or to whoever is monitoring you, or these digital AI systems that are doing remote neural monitoring. And then, like I said, like, there's so many different ways this kind of work. But basically, the electricity could power you to power these things in your brain. You could have chips in your head, you could have implants, it could be completely naturally, it could be a complete illusion. Once again, it could be to heal you, and regenerate, different things that have been created in your body or mind, both real and non-real. So once again, getting back to that, so if you touch your forehead, you're kind of like blocking thoughts, kind of could show you how you can block thoughts, which if you have someone attacking you, which I'm not going to go much more into this, but if you have someone psychologically attacking you, or you have subliminal thoughts going in your mind from whatever kind of source, you can block them with third eye light. And it's a technique that you practice over a long period of time, a couple months at least, I would think. So you could be blocking thoughts, or hey, you're saying, block someone else. You could be sending a message, your thoughts or whatever, just to add to it. But you can say hey, block their thoughts, block for somebody else, and there's grabbing your nose, pointing to the nose, kind of like a check kind of that I'm making with my fingers. It's a check mark. These are all different things they do, but if you grab your nose, it's like right on the nose, as in, hey, you're right on the money, you're right on the nose. Could take different meanings. So looking up to someone, looking down, as in, hey, you should look down, or you should look up, or I'm looking down to you, anything like that. To smirk, grin, can kiss or hug someone. That can have a different meaning and different facial expressions when they do that. Like I said earlier, touch your elbow, just kind of like to give one of these kind of schizophrenic, kind of deaf things. You break up the word L into elbow, a bow tie, a gift. L, take from an ancient language, L means God, which I'm an etymology nerd, so that's why that worked on me. But it could be an elbow as in a gift, or a gift as in a bad thing. Like I said, a gift could be a good or bad thing. Once again, going to the pure evil of this technology and these messages. But also elbow, you give someone an elbow, hey, don't talk, or elbow, hey, I'm about to be really rough with you in a psychological or verbal way. You touch a knee, as in take a knee, touch a knee, bow down kind of thing. Clear throat, kind of gets people's attention. Obviously, the more you're whatever, I've had people clear their throat. Literally, I'd get something in my throat and I'd have to swallow. Like, that's how bad this programming is. And you can also do stuff like, yes, yeah, I agree with you. No, that's a bad idea. So it goes back into like that schizo opposite meaning, kind of really playing and manipulating and, witchcraft, this goes back, before acting, obviously. So just saying, these are all different ways. So moving on, you can create subliminal cues with language, numbers, and colors. So with clothing, like I said in the last video, they do a lot of stuff with politics. Red and blue, they have, like I said, they have a lot of people in these shows doing the psychic driving of red cars, so it gives you the impression that it's being done to Republicans. A lot of these white males, majority were Republican or whatever, going on these mass shootings, or doing crimes or whatever. Also, like they get red. That's the color that they wave in front of the bull to get it really pissed off, so they can make that connotation as well. So then whenever you see red, it makes you see red, you get really pissed off. So that's kind of what they can do with clothing. I'm not going to go too much into that, because it can make you crazy. But like I said, some people intend this in the writing. They intend the wardrobe. They intend these subliminal messages. Sometimes it's coincidence, sometimes it's you going crazy, and sometimes it's a combination. So like I said, with numbers 1 through 10, you can think, if you thought to yourself, you could think through different meanings. 12, meaning I was given was 12 tribes, and you have the 13th tribe, the lost tribe. That's how they can get with you if you, something like that, where you have language, and you see 12 a lot in the systematic legacy of these people, you know, whether it goes to ancient times to the more modern Mason stuff. Um, Secret societies of all types. You know, I say Mason because they're obviously the biggest one, had the biggest influence on our society. But so 1 to 10, you could get anything, but 12, you know, could mean something to you personally or something. 13, as we know, bad luck. As I said about, you know, the X and that meaning something. And 17 kind of meaning you're stuck, not being an adult. And 27, you know, 17 to 27, that's when I was exiled, which they, you know, started calling me X for, you know, exiled, or X marks the spot. And they have the 27 Club, which killed a bunch of musicians. 21, that's blackjack. It goes to how people are playing games with you and how you kind of play with yourself when you watch TV after you've been programmed, and then you get in trouble for doing that, which they program you to do, and all these monstrous other things they do once you break the glass and you're like taking energy from people on screen, or worse, or taking their light. You know, it goes a lot of different crazy ways. And like I said, like 88, 99, 07, you know, the Bond movies, 007, 8 for an infinity, you know, just different contexts like this. So try not to go into that, just to show you a little bit of examples without going too much. Kind of went a little too much into the numbers, but what are you gonna do? So all these things kind of do cues and signals, and another way they can do this is with names, known people, famous names, names of actors, and they can create these cognitive and disorienting associations, which generally do recur in shows, like I said, with John and Jack, and how that ties to the servant and these biblical things that go back, you know, to the Jewish and Hebrew names and version of this, where it's Jacob and Yaakov, and Jacques in French. Like they're all, you know, yeah, there's different historical stuff, but you know, you see in Hollywood, you know, why are so many people John and Jack? You know, that's kind of where that comes from, and it's used, people jacked into the Matrix, all this kind of crazy stuff. But basically, it's, you know, people giving service to this legacy and these secret societies of the elite or ruling class, and you know, also being known as jokesters or heels or supplanters who are trying to get over on people, which is ironically what I think Jacob means. I don't remember if I'm remembering that correctly, but so it goes into the origins that this goes back to ancient philosophy, spiritual teachings, religion, and there's sometimes, you know, if you look up, just like I said, the names, I'm not making any connotations negative to Jewish or Christian faith or anything like that. I'm just taking it, you know, by the language, and the language can accurately depict history and culture and connect them and show who were the winners and why certain words were chosen for certain reasons. And same with catchphrases and stuff like that, different sayings, all can be used to be subversive, obviously. But that goes with the John and Jack stuff. You have Anne and Anna, big name in the Bible. Mary or Maria, like I said, goes into the Virgin Mary rituals and the Virgin rituals, where someone is so pure, it rose without thorns. You know, rose is used as a symbol for that, and a lot of other stuff. So you'll see a lot of people like that, and oftentimes, like I said, like these characters in shows or books or stories, they'll take on certain characters of, like, you know, if someone's a Mary in a story, they're really taking on some connotations of a pure character, of someone who tries to be good. And like I said, people in real world, especially how evil it's gotten of this, you know, once you know the truth, they really look at you like an idiot if you're trying to be good, you know, because God forbid you imagine living in a world, you know, the perfect ideal version of yourself, or in a perfect world. And then, like I said, like going back to John and Jack, just to show you how they can manipulate names. Let's say one of the names, the character's name, or you'll see it in the credits. They do this to fuck with you big time. That you see names in the credits and you try not to like get some kind of reading or Tourette's or some kind of bad stuff like that. And that's how they torture you. That's how they groom you. That's how they program you. But somebody's name could be Jack Cannon, and you could think Jack Cannon as in you know, a jack weapon, you know, as a weapon or something, or it's jack cannon as in canon as canon part of the story. So this is part of the jack canon. So it goes into this whole long story and legacy of the jacks and the servants and the jesters. Just an example of that. And then you have literally like more obvious versions, like a girl's name could be Crystal Ball, you know, for a crystal ball, you know what I mean? So her name is Crystal, last name Ball, you know. So that's enough of that schizophrenic kind of foundation of stuff, but just kind of proof of concept showing that yes, people do this, and if they want to be malicious, there's no limit to it. And like I said, have the CIA involved with this and the MK Ultra and all these departments kind of leading to the science and the technology behind it and pushing the brain as far as it can, breaking the mind so they can fix it, and doing that over and over and over again. Stuff I've personally experienced. So once again, this all goes into protecting the gate, protecting the gatekeepers, protecting these guardians, keeping the guard on, you know, whatever. But this stuff goes far beyond doublespeak, or I think it was like newspeak in 1984. But clearly 1984 horror, you know, just horrible stuff. And like I said, now this doublespeak is in the culture, this duality where it's pure evil. You know, metal and hardcore lyrics, you see it as something that's talking evil, but then you come to find like some people are actually talking about killing people, and you know, killing the chickens of the world, or the rats of the world, or the pigs of the world. You know, cops, people investigating, spies, so many different versions. You know. So as I said before, I think you can zoom in on different items in the background, and if you look in the background of shows, you see this a lot, you know what I mean? Or if someone's reading a book, they just show it just enough, and if you're crazy in the modern age, you can pause anything. But you know what I mean? So just certain items in the background, you could read certain items, could be symbols, objects, and those objects could have connotations to the dialogue, or accent the dialogue that was just said. Like I said, books could have subliminal connections to commands. As I mentioned, no smoking signs. Another thing people do with that game stuff is drinking. You know, oh, they did something, you know, you have drinking games. Oh, they did this, I'm drinking. So there's stuff like that. And sometimes it's part of the script just to try and get people to get that. And then it, you know, kind of fucks with their head. Kind of like putting up the point, you know, and goes into the blood sport. Had both things done to me in public. It's really disgusting. And once again, if it was just a hazing and an initiation, and then you get through it after 6 months, okay. But if you disobey, that means you die. That means you get tortured till you're dead. Or they literally pick people from birth, or at 17, when some bad stuff happens to them, have a bunch of people isolate them, do spying and espionage on them, isolate them more, get all their friends to not like them, and then 10 years later, they're put into this ritual for scapegoat stuff. So that's just, you know, tip of that iceberg. But yeah, so alcohol could go into alchemy. Alcohol, you split it up like that. Alcohol. So it just, you know, different stuff like that. You don't even understand. You know, it's just the accent on al in your mind takes it to the alchemy thing. So you think it's like, you know, think of alcohol. You're getting drunk on the words. Goes into the whole death concept. So, and there are shows that say that as much. But yeah, also with the objects and shows, can dictate good luck, bad luck, instill more paranoia, can instill superstition. That's a big thing. Like I said, you don't have to believe that 13 is bad luck, but you see it enough with subliminal messages, it creates fight or flight, and it creates repetition in your head that makes it kind of true to you in a way. So I already said in another video, like, I do believe Generation Z, the Gen Z, Zoomers, zooming into the future. What aspects of this they know and they have to deal with, I do not know. But yeah. And there's some cues to, some more cues for controlling. Putting your hands up, you know. You know, I don't know if I would do that later. You know, kind of like stop, you know. Or it could also symbolize the glass, you know, that's been used for me. You know, something goes like this, as in don't break the fourth wall, don't break the glass. Going back to psychic driving and the use of cars and stuff like that, they have a lot of people in certain shows taking the keys or taking a bag, and that can represent different things depending on how they do it in context to dialogue or whatever. Can play mind games where you think someone's driving your head, and in your head there's a simulation of something new happening at that time. Shutting and opening doors, it quite literally creates like this psychological mapping where you shut the door on a subject in your head and you open the door on a subject on your head, and whatever they do to the neurons or synapses in your head, or whatever the automated algorithm is, however it's programmed, this will open up certain parts of your mind to fire off tons of neurons or wiring pathways in your brain to basically be like, oh, I'm going to talk about this, which once again, have that enough, and then add interrogation into it, and how you can get people to organically have those reactions in their brain, or just, you know, while you're talking to somebody, you can do that on a conscious level and attack their conscious level. A big one that women do, you know, they have like these whole schools, sadly, that goes into the porn industry, and sadly I've seen that with my own eyes and been attacked, you know, with the art of seduction. And some people have done some really crazy evil stuff, and they kind of play with you with their eyes if they know you're going through this, and they're part of a psyop. They're trying to make money, they're trying to rob you, going back into robbing memories and thoughts. And like I said, going back to the evil of this stuff, concentration camps, seen in a whole new light, right? They break your concentration, and it's a camp to break down your concentration. And all these people who want to hunt people love doing that, and, you know, programmed to hate, all that kind of stuff. You know, then someone can put on a jacket, you know, and that can have different things like kind of take cover or certain stuff like that. I went into the actual tropes. One of the ones I didn't mention from the other one, they always have like a missing person or a dead person in a town that someone just arrives at, and there's this whole like web of lies and a conspiracy plot at the center of everything, and everybody's involved, and they all know different things, and everyone in the town's evil. That is literally based on reality. You have like gatekeepers in towns, right? You have those families who stay in the town, and the whole town family is in that town. Or you have the people that are known in all town as they do plumbing or HVAC or whatever it is, or big families in the town. You have that kind of stuff, and then like I said, like literally just like as I just said, like, you know, multiple people that you would never think. You know, I forget, there's a movie Hot Fuzz where like literally everyone in the town was trying to kill everybody at the end, and that's kind of riffing off that same concept in my opinion. But that's basically what it is. You never know how many people have this evil thing under their mask, or that they're part of this like psyop stuff or whatever, and that they are part of this secrecy, or trying to protect people, or cover up guinea pig experiments, or evil and torture, part of this depopulation program. But millions of people in this country know. I can only speculate how many are involved to a high level, but I know nurses and doctors are. I know people in mental hospitals, first responders are. So that kind of paints a picture that the people that are supposed to keep you safe have a evil capacity that cannot really be understood unless you know. As I said, dogs is like a big one. This could be like for pet commands leading back to the Pavlovian condition where you ring a bell. They have watchdogs. They have ran like cats and dogs, and obviously cats have associations with like Egyptian culture in a way, and dogs can be attributed to guys and cats as girls, or dogs seen as like, you know, the watchdogs of the government. And obviously, like I said, Republicans, they can be more patriotic into that kind of thing, or just spying. I said babies, you know, not wanting to assimilate to the new brave world we live in, even though it's basically a Nazi surveillance state with Nazi self-policing community. So, you know, and that's why they also kill these people and torture people like myself. Like I said, hundreds of thousands every year, and then God knows more millions every year as well, based on, you know, taking this kind of torture all the time, having natural deaths that aren't natural, cover-ups to natural deaths that aren't natural deaths. God knows what percentage, what that could realistically be. if everybody knows, then I guess a large percentage, right? At least know some aspect. You can do this, thing, like I said, with talking about light. Can point to a light, have a lot of lights in the scene, flashlight. Say, get my flashlight out, use your flashlight, and that will kind of be like, hey, I'm going to use my flashlight in this scene, meaning your third eye for protection or to keep a signal out or whatever they tell you, which, like I said, I'll go more into that, but it's hard to know. I know that on camera, if you use your third light, they're more likely to use direct energy weapons on you, and the cameras were everywhere there's a camera. It might block out them being able to see your thoughts. I don't know, but still everyone hears you, so I can't speak to that. Then there's like, hey, I'm gonna dress this person up, I'm gonna give them a haircut. These have different meanings, which I'm not really gonna go into, but they have them in TV shows. Like I said, again, smoked and rolled. Lots of things can be turned into animals. Personification, as I said, can be a beautiful thing, can be an awful thing. In this kind of pet toy simulation, robot simulation, like I said, lots of shows with robots too, can take really awful turn real quick. It can all this programming can be done, like I said, for the hive mind, to get people ready for that, to stop thinking completely, to slow down their thoughts a lot, to follow commands like a dog or a toy or a robot or whatever, a doll, to pay attention, just for the torture of subliminal messages, setting up kind of like delayed cues, and this can go into examining what makes people angry and sad and trying to pull that from them. And then pulling, it's like pulling emotions, trying to get something out of something other than something out of someone other than information. And this is how people try and train to destroy people on top of what they've been through, and knowing all that personal information, their personality. It's like at a certain point it does kind of look kind of pathetic. I think most people agree if they were allowed to say so. So that kind of does that. As I said, like, I think I said this before, where they have like pet talk and sex talk. Like, our language has turned into a communication of like kind of like the sex magic dynamic. Like I said, a lot of people do witchcraft, they do cooking, they think they're alchemists of the language, or making up jokes or making up stuff to fuck with people's head. If you're being tortured, wired in, it can be seen as real evil, unless it's like a playful thing. But this sex magic dynamic, it also exists. Where kind of people have to play with each other because they can't think, so they do it with their cues and stuff, trying to get the people to break, stuff like that. So I think that's enough of that. I think I've gone over pretty good in depth to show all the different things. In depth how the actual conditioning works. I could go more in dialogue and show references, but I don't want to do that, because then I think I will be infringing too much and breaching too much, crossing a line that I shouldn't cross. And maybe people will, like I said, if they think I'm a rat, or they said I'm trying to start hell on earth. You guys created hell on earth. You followed everybody in this Nazi surveillance state. You turned your, you burn your towns down one by one because you want to have power and you want to have all this stuff, and you think you're doing it for the good of the people when you are not. And I cannot say that enough. At a certain point, protection is not protection, and who do we need protection from? And couldn't anybody lead and create the same basic society? And haven't we been paying taxes for 5,000 years? Haven't we had the same exact economy for 5,000 to 10 years? Haven't we had the same tropes of good versus evil, divide and conquer for 5 to 10,000 years? There are some parts of the legacy that you should have changed a long time ago. And Masons founded this country, and they were a big part of Europe. They spread all over the world in the 1700s. The Masons who founded this country did it supposedly for religious freedom. Don't you think they could have brought all this occult stuff into the culture at the very founding of it? Had freedom of religion, freedom of spiritual paths, freedom of culture, connecting all the other cultures in the countries of the past. showing that the language was embedded with all this kind of stuff already in it, and that they were keepers of the faith and keepers of this legacy of culture and history. They could have done that 300 years ago, but instead they built up this whole story so that they could take over. And they took out monarchs, they started revolutions, they started the world wars, all in different ways, different factors. Not saying just secret societies, but these people, the governments, the elite, the ruling class, the espionage, the militaries, all these different components coming together. And we could have a very different world, way better world, more perfect world. And like I said, I know this dark side, this dark humor has been around for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, and this good versus evil, battle of the cosmos kind of thing. And at a certain point, it's like, can it just be a story? Do we have to use this to control our people, take away our privacy, even our privacy of thought, take away our freedom of expression for political correctness, all this awful stuff, throw our patriotism in the trash for basically, political propaganda to push civil rights and, hey, white people are evil, white people are racist, or if you don't do this, you're racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, all that jargon that kind of started. And we've gone back and forth with it. Like I said, I was brought up in the mainstream. I was brought up as a liberal, but I was also definitely outside the mainstream. I listened to metal and hardcore and had like the fuck authority kind of thing. And obviously, like I said, they brainwashed all the hippie stuff out of the hippies. They brainwashed all this, punky stuff out of the punks. All the metal kids. But people still have that in their core. Hardcore, the genre of music, hardcore rap. It's because people have a hardcore. And it's not because they can't let go and they're not getting with the times. If you're taking on, suggestive stuff about Satanism and Satan being cool, the devil's cool, that came with all that stuff in the 80s and all the imagery that came with it. It's like, isn't like, I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, but isn't the way we did it when Christianity ran supreme, isn't that a little bit better because it was just more open to beauty? And look at our culture now. Hip-hop is pretty much trash. Rock was killed in the 2000s. No rock anymore. They actually call it butt rock now if you look into it. Metal and hardcore, what I grew up listening to, half of it is disgusting stuff, and most of this music is used with this schizo kind of meaning to go out and kill people. The other half of it is beautiful, but way too much of it's okay. And you talk about people suppressing certain language or words based on racism or whatever, obviously a bad thing, but I'm pretty sure killing people with subliminal messages, or literally killing people who are in the know and having these hidden wars, even though there's no hidden war, it's just people struggling for control when they're all united and keeping a secret about a depopulation system. Pretty disgusting, right? And to actually participate, more, making people in grocery stores participate in script, making people, take this kind of language into their culture and take this kind of language into their conversation in everyday life. It just pollutes the community. It makes noise. And, you can't avoid noise, but can we have pure noise? So, kind of let out a little fire there. I don't do that too often, but if you heard me scream about stuff, it'd be probably about that kind of stuff. Not so much about the racist, sexism, whatever, but, freedom of expression, what love could be in this world that we are not having, we could be a lot closer to the perfect world that we all dream of. And like I said, with this video series, that's what I'm trying to do. So once again, bringing up the B-roll, industry standard name for submitting or substituting rather different scenes for other ones, and they do multiple takes. Could be with different clothes, different dialogue. Literally, I've seen with my own eyes, they'll do different gestures and stuff like that. And when I was watching, I said this already, but they have embedded videos on YouTube, like when I watch this, or social media. They have pre-recorded or live video, and so they can switch out video or footage within a video, and then you go back and rewind it and it's gone. Or they have other information saying stuff, and then you're like, did I just see that? Did I not just see that? Did they switch words? And that's what really makes you go crazy in the beginning. And they can do this any kind of thing, and people can gaslight you in real life like this and be like, did you just see that? And like, no, I didn't. And they will gaslight you about the smallest stuff, So and this is just one technique of many to manipulate people or make think they're crazy. You know what I mean? I've had people do such petty things that you could not even believe, but it's just for an experiment, just to hunt people, make people lose their mind. Back to the B-roll. This can now be substituted with AI or deep fakes, like I said, and this could stretch over into our real world, where it's like we have to, like, you got to believe the one narrative, right? So what comes along with that? Well, when we say JFK wasn't killed, you got to believe us. What comes with that? Like, you could literally have, eyewitnesses, just as an example. I'm not saying this is the case, but eyewitnesses seeing JFK kind of like get up or kind of wiggle around or like whatever, like basically if they like faked it in real person, in reality, in real life, and then on TV they're saying, oh, he got killed, and all the people who were there were saying, no, I saw it with my own eyes. You take 9/11 too, saw it with my own eyes, and yet it could have been faked or whatever, just saying crazy examples. But like, is this the future we want to live in, where they can literally control all the people that are part of these psych ops and then have them pretty much be actors for real life situations, which I'm going to guess this happens in some form or another. And this is once again how they create and establish and keep the political narratives. Like I said, Republicans as the heel, liberals as the good guy. Got to always have the good guy win. They push awful propaganda on the right, so that when they want to push some awful laws or do immigration and do extreme stuff with that, they can use them, because they're always like the scapegoat for the political situation. If they're going to appease the people, they use the liberals. So that's how the back and forth of the two-party thing works, and why there's only two big parties. It may be different in Britain or Europe, but they still have the same framework, same structuring. So yeah, kind of got pretty much all that. Once again, the concept of updating, it can happen in culture, and it can happen basically, in someone's life, or it can happen in these TV shows. So I could have seen a alternative version, updated version of a show, just to see what my reaction would be, and then I go back and I see it. A lot of times on Netflix, you always see, and once again, this is a subconscious technique. You use the same show, but it has a different artwork for it on Netflix, and you're clicking, and they actually use this as a way to get more people to watch, and they'll be like, oh, that looks interesting this time, but it didn't look interesting before. It's the same thing that they do in conversations, in culture, with catchphrases, with language, with culture. When you see the subtleties of stuff like that, you can see how manufactured our society is. So I guess that's kind of what I'm saying with that. And so, like I said, I already got another 2 hours. There's more parts I can add to this, but I'll keep it like that. And say thank you for watching. I hope I tried to understand, have you understand as best I could. And I hope this really opens up your mind to the level of evil and manipulation. And when I say evil, I mean pure evil. And like I said, once again, leads to depopulation programs, suicide, homicide, pure torture, punishment of people who don't do what they're told, or whatever the case may be. And it's an awful framework for the society to have that. And this policing with kind of like torture involved, going back to like the prison guard mentality, keeping people as prison toys, dolls, robots, and having this overall totalitarian, fascist kind of council of dictators, and the hierarchy of fascism, or hierarchy of control, and all these industries working together can be a great thing. But if it's for absolute control and to carry out absolute brute force, it is a negative, and it's going to affect us. And if we want to control what people think and believe and say and hear, and take away their freedom of speech, their freedom of expression, and their freedom and their privacy, we can do a lot better. We deserve a lot better. And though people might be afraid of what can happen to them, I want to live in a world where people are at least willing to take some chances, whether it's a celebrity or an influencer or anyone on social media, a public figure, a politician. You know, don't follow the party lines, or follow the party lines and speak your mind and try and get it on the news, get it out, have your voice be heard. Stick out. Don't, you know, think, you know, we say think outside the box, but what we really mean is think inside the box, and don't do outside the box unless it's part of the narrative. And, you know, I mean, that's what it comes to be, right? You can do anything you want, you can be anything you want until you find out the truth, right? So I want to live in a world where that's not the case. Take care.